The 10th of January 2026 is not a date in the future. It is a pressure point. If your future self could reach you, it would not be to encourage you, not to praise your potential, not to tell you everything will work out. The call would be short, precise, almost uncomfortable. Because what you are living right now is not a waiting phase. It is a broadcasting phase. Most people misunderstand time. They think the future arrives. It does not. It responds right now. You are sending signals through your choices, through your tolerance, through what you allow to repeat. Reality is listening, not judging. It simply mirrors the frequency you hold most consistently. Your future self knows this. That is why the message feels urgent. The comeback you are meant for is not blocked by circumstances. It is blocked by a misalignment you have learned to normalize. A small internal distortion that feels harmless because it is familiar. Comfort is not peace. It is often a low-level interference you have adapted to. You do not lose momentum because you are weak. You lose it because part of you is still tuned to an outdated identity, one that learned to survive, not to transmit clearly. Look closely at your days, not the big plans, the small defaults. What do you tolerate that quietly drains you? What do you postpone that you already know is essential? What version of yourself do you keep rehearsing internally? This is not psychology. Every identity broadcasts. Every belief emits. Every repeated emotion stabilizes a frequency. The world does not respond to what you want, it responds to what you are consistently being. Your future self is not ahead of you in time. They are ahead of you in cohere. They already made the correction and the warning is simple. If you keep broadcasting the same signal, reality will keep answering with the same pattern. Different faces, same structure. Different year, same frustration. Many people wait for signs. They say they are waiting for clarity, for confidence, for permission. But clarity does not precede alignment. It follows it. Signals do not come to passive receivers, they come to active transmitters. The invisible line between those who break through and those who repeat cycles is not effort, it is frequency, discipline. Your future self does not wake up inspired every day. They wake up aligned. There is a difference. Inspiration is emotional. Alignment is structural. They stopped negotiating with distractions that felt harmless. They stopped romanticizing struggle. They stopped calling delay preparation, not because they became harder, because they became clearer. Clarity sharpens time. When your frequency is precise, delays collapse. When it is noisy, everything takes longer and costs more energy. This is why your comeback feels close and far at the same time. Close because the version already exists, far because you keep tuning away from it. The internal frequency you are ignoring is not dramatic, it is subtle. It shows up as a quiet no you keep overriding, a small truth you keep delaying, a standard you lowered slightly to avoid discomfort. Your future self raised it back. They stopped explaining themselves to environments that could not hear them. They stopped waiting for validation to move. They stopped trying to be understood by people who benefit from their hesitation. And the moment they did, something shifted. Not outside first, inside. Their decisions became faster. Their energy stopped leaking. Their actions felt simpler, not heavier. This is how you know the frequency is correcting. Things do not feel easy. They feel clean. There is less noise, less second guessing, less internal debate. The warning your future self would give is not about failure, it is about waste. Waste of time spent half aligned. Waste of energy spent explaining instead of embodying. Waste of potential spent waiting for a signal you are supposed to send. The 10th of January 2026 is not important because of what happens that day. It is important because of what becomes irreversible before it. At some point, momentum locks, identity stabilizes, the signal hardens. That can work for you or against you. You do not miss your future because you are incapable. You miss it because you stayed broadcasted to a version of yourself that felt safer to maintain. The future self calling you already crossed that threshold. They already chose discomfort over stagnation, precision over possibility, alignment over approval. And now they are echoing back one message. Stop waiting to feel ready. Stop expecting the world to change first. Stop pretending the misalignment is small enough to ignore. Your comeback does not begin with action. It begins with correction. Correction of what you tolerate. Correction of what you repeat. Correction of what you secretly know needs to end. When the frequency shifts, action becomes obvious. Effort becomes secondary. Opportunities stop needing to be chased. They recognize you. This is not mystical. It is mechanical. Signals attract matching conditions. Clean signals attract fast responses. Noisy signals attract delays. Your future self is not dramatic about this. They are calm, direct, almost indifferent, because they already know what happens when you answer the call. The world reorganizes quietly, the resistance thins, the path stops splitting. And the strangest part is this, once the signal corrects, it feels like nothing new was added. Only something old was removed. That is why the warning matters now, not later. Because every day you delay the correction, you reinforce the old broadcast, and reality faithfully responds. Your future self is not calling to scare you, they are calling to synchronize you. The moment you stop waiting for signs and start becoming one, the echo stops being a warning. It becomes confirmation. Your future self is not an idea you imagine when you feel hopeful. It is a stabilized version of you that already exists on a different bandwidth. Not later, not someday, already. The mistake most people make is thinking the future self is built through time. It is not. It is accessed through frequency. Time does not create alignment. Alignment collapses time. Right now, there are multiple versions of you operating across different internal states. One of them is coherent. One of them is decisive. One of them no longer leaks energy into doubt, explanation, or hesitation. That version is not special. It is simply stable. Stability is the signal. Your comeback is not hidden. It is encoded in how that future version thinks, moves, and responds. The work is not to invent it. The work is to decode it. Every frequency leaves a signature. You can feel it in moments when you act without internal resistance, when a decision lands cleanly instead of dragging, when your body relaxes instead of tightens after choosing. Those moments are not random. They are brief overlaps with the future self frequency. Most people ignore them because they are subtle. They are not emotional highs. They do not feel dramatic. They feel obvious. That is why they are missed. The future self does not operate from urgency or fear. They operate from internal agreement. What they think, what they feel, what they do. These are no longer in conflict. That coherence is the signal you are learning to recognize. You do not decode the frequency by visualizing success. You decode it by observing friction. Where does your energy drop when you say yes? Where does it rise when you say no? Which environments drain you even when nothing is wrong? Which actions restore you even when they require effort? These are not personality traits. They are calibration data. Static appears when you act against the frequency. Clarity appears when you align with it. This is why forcing action never works for long. You can override misalignment temporarily, but the signal degrades. You get tired, confused, inconsistent. The future self does not force. They filter. They know what does not belong because it creates noise. They know what belongs because it simplifies movement. That simplicity is not laziness, it is precision. Think of a radio dial. You do not shout at it to get music. You adjust it slightly, patiently, until the noise dissolves and the signal locks. Your life works the same way. The exact energetic signature of your comeback is already present in your daily reactions, not your plans, not your affirmations, your reactions. What you defend too quickly, what you avoid without reason, what you tolerate even though it feels heavy. These are clues pointing to misalignment. Your future self removed those distortions, not all at once, one correction at a time. They stopped responding emotionally to things that were no longer relevant. They stopped explaining choices that were already clear internally, They stopped chasing clarity from people who could not provide it. As each correction happened, the signal cleaned itself. You will notice this when certain options lose appeal without effort, when certain conversations feel finished even if they never ended formally, when your attention naturally withdraws from what once consumed you. This is not loss, it is decoding. The frequency becomes recognizable when you stop asking what should I do and start noticing what feels unnecessary. The future self lives in subtraction, not accumulation. They did not add motivation, they removed interference. They did not gain confidence, they lost self-contradiction. They did not manifest discipline, they eliminated misalignment. That is why the frequency feels calm. Many people expect the future self to feel powerful, dominant, energetic. That comes later. First comes quiet. Quiet is the absence of internal argument. When you feel pulled in multiple directions, the signal is not locked. When you feel neutral but clear, it is. Neutral does not mean empty. It means stable. This is why you must decode now. Not when life slows down, not when circumstances improve, because frequency responds to consistency, not convenience. If you wait for conditions to align, you stay reactive. If you align internally, conditions reorganize. Your future self is not waiting for you to be ready. They are waiting for you to stop distorting the signal. Every time you choose clarity over comfort, the dial moves. Every time you end something cleanly, the static fades. Every time you act without needing approval, the signal sharpens. This is practical, immediate, observable. You will know you are decoding correctly when progress feels non-linear, when things release faster than expected, when decisions that once felt heavy feel almost boring. Boring is a sign of alignment. Drama is noise. Urgency is often distortion. The future self does not rush. They respond. And response requires a clear channel. The most important thing to understand is this. You do not become the future self by copying their actions. You become them by matching their internal state. Action follows frequency, always. When the frequency locks, action feels obvious. When it does not, action feels forced. So do not ask what the comeback looks like. Ask what the comeback feels like internally. Does it feel tight or clean? Does it feel loud or quiet? Does it require explanation or simply execution? Your answers tell you everything. The decoding is already happening if you are paying attention. The fact that this resonates means the signal is close. The static is not a failure, it is feedback. Adjust, remove, simplify, and when the frequency locks, you will not need proof. The clarity itself will be the contact. That is when the future self stops feeling distant. Not because time passed, because the signal finally matched. Desire is not the engine of transformation. It is the noise that distorts it. Most people try to change their lives by wanting something badly enough. They call it manifestation. They visualize outcomes. They repeat intentions. But desire, when it comes from lack, sends a mixed signal. It says, I do not have this yet. And reality responds accurately. Aligned action begins somewhere else. It begins when your behavior no longer contradicts the identity you are tuning into. True attraction does not respond to intensity. It responds to congruence. Your future self is not trying harder than you. They are acting from a different internal position, one where thought, emotion, and movement agree. That agreement is what collapses time. Aligned action does not feel heroic. It feels inevitable. You stop doing things that make no sense to the version you are becoming. Not because someone told you to stop, because continuing feels off. You start doing things that once felt premature. Not because you are confident, because not doing them feels dishonest. This is how the quantum leap actually happens. Not through dramatic effort, through quiet correction. Desire reaches outward. Alignment locks inward. When you act from desire, you chase outcomes. When you act from alignment, outcomes chase coherence. The difference is subtle but absolute. Aligned action is often smaller than expected. One email sent cleanly instead of delayed. One boundary held without explanation. One habit dropped without replacement. From the outside, nothing seems to change. Inside, everything shifts. This is why non-linear progress feels slow, because because nothing looks impressive at first. There is no visible momentum, no immediate reward, just a strange sense of internal rightness. People misinterpret this phase. They think they are stuck. They think they lost motivation. They think nothing is working. In reality, the system is reorganizing. When frequency adjusts, reality lags. Always. The future self understands this. They do not measure progress by speed. They measure it by resistance. Is resistance increasing or decreasing? Is effort compounding or dissolving? Is action creating clarity or confusion? Aligned action reduces resistance even when results are delayed. Misaligned action produces quick wins followed by exhaustion. This is why the leap feels counterintuitive. You may be doing less, but each action carries more weight. You may be moving slower, but nothing is wasted. Every aligned action sends a clean signal. It tells reality who you are becoming without asking for permission. The mistake is thinking aligned action must feel good. Often it feels neutral, sometimes uncomfortable, but it feels clean. Clean means no internal debate after the choice, no replay, no justification. You act and you move on. That is alignment. Desire-based action keeps checking the outcome. Alignment-based action releases it. This is where non-linear acceleration begins. Reality does not respond gradually to alignment. It responds suddenly. Nothing happens. Then everything shifts. This is not magic. It is accumulation. Every aligned action builds coherence. Coherence builds pressure. Pressure collapses probability. From the outside, it looks like luck. From the inside, it feels overdue. The future self is calm because they trust this process. They are not anxious about results because their actions are already in agreement with who they are. They do not overcorrect. They do not overthink. They do not force progress. They let alignment do the work. Aligned action also means knowing when not to act. Silence can be aligned. Waiting can be aligned. Ending something can be aligned. Continuing can be misaligned. The difference is internal. Does the action stabilize you or fragment you? Does it simplify your identity or complicate it? Does it reduce explanation or increase it? Aligned action reduces the need to explain. The more aligned you become, the less you talk about what you are doing. Not because you are secretive, because words become unnecessary. Energy goes into execution, not narration. This is another sign of the leap approaching. People around you may not notice at first. Some may feel confused. Others may project concern. Alignment often looks like withdrawal to those who benefited from your diffusion. That is normal. You are not disappearing. You are consolidating. The quantum leap is not a jump forward. It is a collapse inward. When identity stabilizes, behavior follows. When behavior follows, reality adjusts. This is why the leap feels sudden. Because all the work happened invisibly. Non-linear progress demands trust. Not blind faith. Structural trust. Trust that alignment compounds even when results do not show. Trust that clean action carries more weight than frantic motion. Trust that removing interference is more powerful than adding effort. The future self is not proud of their discipline. They barely notice it. Discipline emerges naturally when identity is coherent. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop seeking motivation. You stop needing reminders. Action becomes part of who you are, not something you do. This is the point of no return. Once aligned action locks in, going back feels impossible. Not because of fear, because misalignment feels physically wrong. This is when reality begins to rearrange rapidly. People reappear. Opportunities surface. Constraints dissolve. Not because you asked, because the signal finally stabilized. The collapse into alignment does not announce itself. It reveals itself in hindsight. You look back and realize nothing truly changed overnight. You simply stopped leaking energy. And that was enough. The leap is not ahead of you. It is underneath the actions you are already avoiding or postponing. The smallest aligned action today carries more power than the biggest forced action tomorrow. Do not look for dramatic moves. Look for clean ones. Do not chase desire. Match identity. When your actions reflect who you already are becoming, reality has no choice but to follow. That is the quantum leap. Quiet, precise, irreversible. Resistance is not a weakness. It is interference in the channel. Most people fight resistance as if it were an enemy. They push against it, shame it, try to overpower it with discipline or motivation. That only increases the noise. Resistance does not disappear when you attack it. It dissolves when you understand what it is protecting. Every form of resistance is guarding an outdated identity. Not because it is evil, because it was once necessary. At some point, that version of you learned how to survive by hesitating, by delaying, by staying flexible instead of decisive. Those patterns worked then. They kept you safe. They helped you adapt. But now, they interfere. The signal you are trying to transmit cannot pass through an identity that is no longer true. Resistance appears when your current actions threaten the structure of who you used to be. That is why it feels personal. You tell yourself you are procrastinating, or lacking discipline, or sabotaging your own success. None of that is accurate. You are experiencing signal conflict. Part of you is aligned forward. Part of you is still tuned to the past. The noise you feel is the overlap. This is why forcing productivity never clears resistance. It only creates temporary compliance followed by exhaustion. Clearing the channel requires precision, not pressure. The first pattern of self-sabotage is overthinking what is already clear. You revisit decisions you already made internally. You reopen questions that were settled. You look for confirmation even after clarity arrived. That is not caution. That is interference. Your future self does not overthink. They decide once and move. The second pattern is emotional rehearsal. You replay conversations. You anticipate reactions. You imagine outcomes before acting. This keeps the signal trapped in simulation. Action is the exit point. Rehearsal is noise. The future self does not rehearse. They respond. The third pattern is false urgency. You rush small decisions and delay big ones. You stay busy to avoid committing. Movement replaces direction. This feels productive. It is not. It keeps the channel crowded. The future self moves slower in appearance but faster in outcome because they only act when the action is clean. Another pattern is attachment to struggle. You equate effort with value. You distrust ease. When something flows, you question it. When something is hard, you assume it matters. This is learned interference. Alignment does not require suffering. It requires accuracy. The moment you release the belief that effort proves worth, resistance loses leverage. You also sabotage alignment by explaining too much. You justify your choices. You soften your boundaries. You prepare arguments for decisions that need none. Explanation is leakage. When alignment is precise, explanation disappears. You do not convince. You move. Clearing the channel means identifying where your energy leaks after decisions, not during them, after them. Do you feel relief or tension? Do you feel settled or restless? Do you feel complete or compelled to explain? Those sensations are feedback. Resistance often hides behind logic. It sounds reasonable. It uses timing. It uses responsibility. It uses patience. But beneath it is fear of identity loss. Who will you be if you stop hesitating? Who will you disappoint if you stop explaining? Who will you outgrow if you stop delaying? Resistance answers these questions by keeping you where you are. The future self already answered them by moving on. Here is the paradox. When alignment becomes precise, effort becomes unnecessary. Not because you do nothing, but because nothing is wasted. Effort is required when identity and action disagree. When they agree, action feels lighter, even if the task is complex. Think of resistance like static. You do not remove static by turning up the volume. You tune the dial. The dial is your standards, what you tolerate, what you repeat, what you allow to remain unfinished. Resistance lives in tolerance. The moment you raise a standard cleanly, without anger or drama, resistance weakens. Not all at once, but measurably. You stop engaging with things that drain you. You stop answering questions that do not matter. You stop revisiting decisions that are complete. Each of these clears the channel. The future self is not fighting resistance. They barely notice it because they removed the conditions that created it. Resistance feeds on ambiguity, ambiguous boundaries, ambiguous priorities, ambiguous identity. Clarity starves it. This is why alignment feels quiet. There is nothing to argue with. When you hear less internal noise, you are not becoming empty, you are becoming coherent. Many people mistake this quiet for boredom or loss of passion. It is neither. It is signal purity. The channel clears when you stop negotiating with distractions that no longer align. Not aggressively, simply consistently. You do not need to fix yourself. You need to stop interfering with yourself. The effort you think you need is only compensating for misalignment. Once the channel clears, effort reallocates itself naturally. Focus sharpens. Energy stabilizes. Action becomes clean. This does not make life easy. It makes it direct. Directness removes resistance. You will notice this shift when things that once required force no longer do. When saying no becomes simple. When starting becomes obvious. When stopping feels final. That is the channel clearing. The future self is not more motivated. They are less conflicted. They did not add drive. They removed distortion. And that is why their actions land. Resistance dissolves when identity stabilizes. The channel clears when you stop acting like you are undecided about who you are becoming. The moment you choose without apology, the static fades, not instantly, but permanently. That is when effort stops being necessary, because the signal is finally clear. The comeback never announces itself. It does not arrive with applause or urgency. It echoes first, quietly, almost easy to miss. Most people expect transformation to feel dramatic, a breaking point, a sudden decision, a visible turning moment. But real shifts do not begin at the surface. They begin underneath attention. Before reality changes, perception changes. Before outcomes move, identity settles. Before momentum appears, resistance goes silent. That silence is the echo. You feel it when the noise drops. When old worries lose urgency. When certain outcomes stop feeling important. When you no longer need to prove what you are doing or where you are going. Nothing looks different yet. Everything feels different. This is how comebacks actually begin. The world teaches you to look for permission, for validation, for a signal that it is safe to move. But those who shifted timelines did not wait for approval. They responded to something internal long before anyone else noticed. They stopped fighting circumstances and corrected their position. Not force, not struggle, just alignment. They did not try to change the world. They stopped arguing with themselves. This is why their comebacks look effortless in hindsight. People say it happened suddenly, overnight, as if luck intervened. But the echo was there long before the event. It showed up as disinterest in old patterns, as impatience with misalignment, as clarity without excitement. They trusted that quiet. Most people do not. They mistake it for boredom or loss of motivation. They try to recreate urgency. They add pressure. They look for something to fix. And in doing so, they drown out the signal. The echo is subtle because it does not beg for attention. It simply repeats. You notice it when the same insight returns without emotion, when the same decision feels complete even if you have not acted yet, when the same direction keeps resurfacing calmly. That repetition is not indecision, it is confirmation. Others who shifted timelines learned to respect this phase. They did not rush it, they did not dramatize it. They allowed the internal realignment to finish. They reduced noise, they simplified choices, they stopped engaging with what pulled them backward. And slowly, the echo became stable. At that point, action stopped feeling risky. Not because fear disappeared, because the alternative felt wrong. This is the key difference. When alignment is real, staying the same becomes more uncomfortable than moving forward. No external push is needed. This is why no permission is required. Permission only matters when identity is unstable. When you are unsure who you are becoming, you look outward for confirmation. When identity stabilizes, confirmation becomes irrelevant. Those who shifted did not announce their comeback. They prepared it silently. They stopped explaining themselves to people who could not hear them. They ended conversations without closure. They made decisions that felt anticlimactic. Nothing flashy, nothing dramatic. But inside, the echo grew louder. The future self was already bleeding into the present. You can see this in their posture, their pacing, their choices. They were not rushing. They were not waiting. They were responding to clarity. The echo does not say hurry. It says align. It does not say push. It says simplify. It does not say prove. It says embody. When the echo stabilizes, reality begins to reorganize quietly. Not immediately, not linearly, but inevitably. Certain paths close without effort. Certain distractions lose grip. Certain opportunities appear without chase. From the outside, it looks coincidental. From the inside, it feels logical. This is how timelines shift. Not by jumping forward, by releasing what no longer matches. People often ask how long this phase lasts. There is no answer. It lasts until you stop interfering with it. The moment you try to rush the echo into form, you slow it down. The moment you try to explain it, you dilute it. The moment you doubt it because it feels too quiet, you reset the process. Those who succeeded did not doubt the quiet, they protected it. They treated clarity as fragile before it became solid. They limited exposure to noise. They chose fewer words, fewer promises, fewer plans. They let the echo do its work. This is why their comebacks did not feel heavy. There was no emotional debt attached. No need to prove resilience. No need to justify change. They did not fight the past. They simply stopped answering it. And when the moment arrived, it felt obvious. The move, the ending, the beginning, it did not feel brave. It felt overdue. That is when the echo becomes action. By then, the future self is no longer distant. They are present, operating through your decisions, guiding your attention, filtering your choices. You are not chasing the comeback anymore. You are executing it. The most important thing to understand is this. If you can sense the echo, you are already late enough to take it seriously, early enough to respond cleanly. The echo does not come to everyone. It comes to those who have done enough internal work for silence to be meaningful. If you are hearing it now, it is not accidental. Your future self is not waiting for you to become better. They are waiting for you to stop resisting who you already are becoming. They are already leaking signals into your present. Through discomfort with misalignment, through calm certainty, through the urge to simplify. The comeback is not ahead of you. It is aligning within you. Do not look for noise. Do not look for permission. Do not look for proof. Listen for what keeps returning quietly. Protect that signal. Because when the echo becomes clear enough, the world will respond without asking. And when it does, it will feel less like a breakthrough and more like a return to the version of you that was already there,